What an evening, huh? This is what Concordia is about, insightful and meaningful conversations. The next one, it's about the role of multilateralism in advancing long-term sustainability frameworks. Our speakers, VIPs, are going to talk or discuss on how corporations and governments work together through partnerships to drive economic cooperation and sustainable growth in Latin America and the Caribbean. So please, help me to welcome to the stage Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, His Excellency Mukhtar Babayev, and Linda Mabhena-Olagunju.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was just waiting for everyone to take their seats, and maybe if we can get the doors closed at the back. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have today around the just energy transition. It's an area that I'm very passionate about myself, working in the sector, and we have the two best people to speak about the subject matter. Your Excellency, I'll start with you for this first initial question. When we're building up to the road to COP, I think everyone knows the targets around achieving net zero by 2050. But the biggest question we keep asking, especially in the global south, is how we're going to achieve these lofty targets, given that there is an issue currently around financing of the just energy transition. What can we expect to see with this COP29 around the issue addressing the deficit in funding?
Thank you. You're absolutely right that in our agenda, for COP29 agenda, the financial issues are the priority, and we will discuss the several issues. First of all, the new financial goal for several further years, and as you know, the previous target was $100 billion, and now the countries needs to sit together and discuss a new collective quantified goal. Within this program, our team provided all necessary conditions for the parties to discuss, to make a debates, to find any way to find the conclusion agreement at the COP29. It is not so easy. We try to organize several platforms to the countries, to group of the countries, to international organizations, for international financial institutes, to find the mechanism, more easy mechanism of financing, to simplify access for the money, for finance. And I think this year, 2024, it's a critical year to find these conclusions. At the same time, another one very big part of our work is to provide the submission of new biennial transparency reports. We understand that the finance from one hand and transparency documents, transparency reports are very important, crucial to find a decision to more ambitious new financial goals. And related to your question regarding NDCs, it is the next year, 2025. It's a year of new NDCs, and dependent from the new financial goal, the countries will be ready to adopt the new determined contributions for next period. And our target is to invite all countries, to call all countries to prepare their NDCs aligned with 1.5 degrees within reach.
Thank you. Honorable Prime Minister, your country has very ambitious targets to reach 100% renewable energy by 2030, which is around the corner, it would appear. One of the key things I've noticed is that there's a great emphasis on power generation and almost to the neglect of how that power is transmitted, especially climate-sensitive countries such as yourselves Has there been a strategy around how to improve the grid infrastructure for that target of 100% renewable energy by 2030 in Grenada?
Yes, well, thank you, Linda, for having me, and it's a pleasure to be sharing the stage with you and with His Excellency. I want to take the opportunity to wish him best wishes on his presidency of COP in Baku. I know it's going to be a difficult ask, but one that is important, and we hope that we all come out better when the conference is over. Let me say that, yes, the targets are ambitious. It's unlikely, however, that we will meet it in 2030, and there are a number of reasons for that. But on the specific question of the grid, in fact, we are fortunate in that the state actually owns majority shareholding in the power company that owns the grid. And so it puts us in a unique position, in fact, to ensure that we find the resources necessary to make sure that the grid can be upgraded and can get to the level of sophistication and the level of reliability that would be required to be able to transition from a one-dimensional power generating approach where energy is created by the burning of diesel, which is then distributed on a national grid, to transitioning to a grid that can in fact take solar and other forms of renewable energy onto the grid and then be able to redistribute that to the rest of the country. So it is a focus of ensuring that we can work with our partners, or multilateral financiers or domestic banks to in fact resource this. And that's sort of the singular focus of the power company for the next medium term, the next 5 years. We believe the actual generation of renewables should be left to the private sector. And so we are incentivizing both small-scale renewable as well as large-scale IPP. In fact, we have expressions of interest out currently for some large-scale IPP, and we'll be encouraging more of that. So from a state perspective, we think we need to put infrastructure in place that will ensure that the country can, in fact, take the renewables when they come on stream.
Thank you, Excellency. The follow-up question I have, when people do the transition from hydrocarbon resources to renewable energy sources, especially a country like yours, which imports a lot of this fuel, one tends to forget that there's a lot of importation as well in the renewable energy sector, especially when you're dealing with your solar panels. My country, South Africa, alone imported 17 billion rands worth of solar panels from China. And the missed opportunity for developing nations is always around manufacturing and creating an ecosystem internally for domestic participation. Is there any strategy you may have around how you make sure your people are not left behind as well as you transition as a country, so that it's not just a focus on importing more goods and products externally, but you're creating an industry within your own countries? That way it is sustainable.
So I think there are two aspects to that. To some extent, successful manufacturing always depends on energy and energy costs. And so in circumstances where your energy costs are high, it's almost impossible to be competitive from a manufacturing perspective. And in a sense, that's part of the challenge, even with the transition to renewable energies. But I think there are areas where certainly from a technology transfer and from a skill set perspective, we can certainly empower people, because the transition to renewable energy requires new skills. It requires you to train an entire workforce that can now treat with renewable energy, whether it's the maintenance of solar panels, the installation of solar panels, if you're going into wind or geothermal, all of that knowledge, skill set that is required. So from a training, from an education, from a career path perspective, there are enormous opportunities there. But again, that requires you to have the financial resources as well as the strategy and the vision to be able to treat with that. But it also gives us a unique opportunity as well to encourage your citizens themselves to become innovators and creators in some of that space. Because I'll give you an example. We live in a hurricane belt. Grenada, on the 1st of July, experienced a Category 4 hurricane that became a Category 5 hurricane, the fastest ever in the history of recorded hurricanes that early in the season. The effect of that is that your renewable plants, your solar plants, also have to be built to be able to withstand the hurricanes. And so you also have to be able to look at how can you leverage unique technologies to allow you to withstand that. So for example, can you do solar panels that allows you to dismount them ahead of the hurricane, store them, and be able to put them back after the hurricane passes? That's part of the sort of approach that we have to be able to take and be able to develop those solutions ourselves to some of these challenges. So we think it's a unique opportunity for us to harness that sort of skill set and then be able to share that with the rest of the world.
Not to pick on you, I promise I'll move on to His Other Excellency. But I want to touch a bit on what you mentioned, which is the issue of funding, because one of the complaints that is leveled by developing nations is that there isn't enough money to make this transition happen. And the argument is that we emit less than what has been done by the global north, and surely this transition must be funded adequately in order for it to be effective. No country can be left behind. What are you finding, and what would you like to see in this upcoming COP29 from that perspective to address those? Because it's been an issue that's been hovering for some time, and we're almost dancing around it. And what do you hope to see differently in this upcoming COP29?
Well, it's not an argument that the Global South has emitted less. I could take the Caribbean, for example. It's a fact. To a large extent, our carbon emissions are inconsequential. It's less than 1%. So that's the undisputed fact. So we have not contributed to this global climate crisis. We have not. And so it's not an argument. That's a fact. And in fact, if you take even some of the countries in the region that are much larger, not islands, for example, Suriname and Guyana, their forests, they've preserved a significant portion of the forest, which again helps with the issue of carbon neutrality and in many instances carbon negativity. But the reality is that we are the ones facing the brunt of what has happened. And so when the developed north makes the argument about transitioning, we have to look at transitioning as to the actual state at which countries are. So many of the countries in the south are significantly poor. Their populations are significantly poor. And so to ask them to transition at the same rate that a developed country is able to transition obviously is not fair. And it's openly unjust. That's one. Two, the developed countries are already wealthy. And so they have the resources to actually transition faster. And therefore, given what I said, that it's a fact that we are the ones who have not contributed to the situation, it obviously means if we are talking fairness, if we are talking transparency, if we are talking accountability, it must mean that if you want the developing countries to transition, and if you don't want them to follow your example, then it means you are going to have to help fund that transition. And that's where the challenge lies. To a large extent, there's been a lot of, I will call it, and I'm quoting someone from the African continent, there's been a lot of megawatts of talk, but there hasn't been megawatts of funding.
Yes, well said.
Yes. So that is really what we want from COP. We won the 100 billion. To some extent, I'm not interested in another pledge, and I don't mean to openly disagree with His Excellency. But you know, if you're going to quantify another pledge and we haven't received that which was pledged before, then the credibility of the process is going to be called into question, and it becomes more difficult to achieve and to keep people believing that we're going to find success. So you know, that I think is a critical issue. It's not just the pledges. We need to make sure the funding is available, and we need to then make sure that the funding is actually accessible to the developing countries, and particularly the small island developing states who are oftentimes at the forefront of the direct impacts of the climate change crisis.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. Well said. I mean, I always say there can be no transition without the requisite finance. And to that point, Your Excellency, you raised the discussion around the 100 billion that has been committed. One of the key challenges leveled against that is the fact that sometimes that funding has such a stringent set of criteria that it makes it inefficient for governments to even access that. My country, South Africa, for example, was the first in sub-Saharan Africa to be able to access that 8 billion. But it took a whole team from our government to be able to access those funds. And it took us spending money to be able to access those funds, right, and placing those teams together. How do we make the funding process simpler, quicker, faster, if we're going to meet these targets?
You're right. It is one of the very strong requests coming from especially SEEDs, LDCs and other countries of the developing world, how to simplify access for the money, how to simplify the procedures, how to make the consideration period more shorter than now. And now we're discussing these issues with the MDBs, International Financial Institutes, and different funds, because we understand we need urgent reaction, urgent finance for this, the restoration after disasters and others. And I think this COP29 will be a good platform to talk with the international financial institutes, banks, private sector to how to make this access more easy for the countries, how to prepare to build the special capacity building programs for the countries, because the special teams, financial teams in the countries needs to be ready to present and submit the documents to the international financial institutes and different funds. That's the capacity building is very important. That's why we organize several capacity building programs, trainings for different countries, and I think we will continue this action activities at the COP29 and further.
Thank you. Just as a final wrap-up, one of the biggest things I've noticed is there hasn't been a lot of discussion domestically about how we upskill people who have benefited from the hydrocarbon sector, who continue to have jobs in that sector, in order for them to be able to participate in these new economies around renewable energy. Because without the public buy-in, if people are worried about their jobs and if people are worried about their livelihoods, you're not going to get the buy-in from the general public. And I'll start with you, Prime Minister. What initiatives have you done within your country to sort of reassure the public around skills transfer and the fact that labor is not going to be left behind?
Well, I think the simple answer is that we are going to need to consume more and more energy. So the idea that simply transitioning from one form of energy to another is going to somehow leave you out or leave you behind is something that I think we can easily explain is a myth. So what has to happen is obviously is the skills training and the knowledge transfer and the retraining has to happen. But the reality is for the transmission and distribution purposes, it's the same skill set that you would need. It's simply the form of energy. Most of the production of energy and the diversification of the energy, that is what you're dealing with. So moving from burning diesel to geothermal or to renewable or to wind or to biomass simply means, in fact, you need more jobs. You need more skilled persons. You need people with better and improved skill set. So the opportunities for more employment and for more economic activity is key. And then certainly for small island developing states, you're also looking at energy security. And you're looking at energy reliability and ultimately, hopefully, cheaper energy. If you have all of those in the mix, it means you have a growing economy and an opportunity for more jobs and for more sustained growth. So I think we can easily debunk the myth that somehow you'll be putting people out of work. I think all of the indicators show the contrary. What really is the challenge is getting the financing to make those investments, both in terms of the technology, the infrastructure, and ultimately upskilling or reskilling the persons or attracting new persons to work in those fields.
Thank you.
May I add?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I think it is very important issue. You mentioned very correct ideas regarding the new challenge for all the governments, for all the countries, for new jobs, new skills especially in this the renewable energy and other spheres. That's why International Labour Organization, together with other organizations, we are planning to open the big discussion in Baku at COP29 regarding what we need to do to assist the countries to prepare for the next possible working place. I mean, with the new challenges with the renewables and others. That's why it's a chance for collaboration in this skills upgrading and capacity building between the COP team, international labor organizations, and the governments.
Thank you very much. Really looking forward to COP29 and hoping, like the Prime Minister said, that this year we see some checks and not just megawatts commitment. Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night.